Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/at Senate of Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, C-311. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, C-311. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, C-311. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, C-311. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, C-311. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, C-311. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, C-311. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, C-311. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia? This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, C-311. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, C-311. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/at Senate of Virginia? This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, C-311. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, C-311. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/at Senate of Virginia? This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, C-311. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, C-311. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia? This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, C-311. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, C-311. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/at Senate of Virginia? This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, C-311. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, C-311. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia? This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, C-311. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, C-311.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Neighborhood Transitions, Local Land Use, and Community Living work group meeting. We are glad to have everybody together less than a week and a half from November 4th. So I know everybody is torn in a million and one different directions, and so I really appreciate the opportunity to get together and talk housing policy. So I really appreciate it. So this is our final work group meeting for this year, and then the next meeting will be the full Housing Commission meeting on December 4th. And so this is kind of our last opportunity to get together and dig into the weeds so that we can make recommendations to that full Housing Commission. I do want to say and thank up front our work group, our sub-work groups, as well as individuals who have been working very hard behind the scenes. I think today hopefully will go relatively quickly, but I don't want that to suggest that there hasn't been a lot of hard work. There really has been in terms of the sub-work groups getting together, and so I just want to thank all of the members for doing the heavy lifting in that regard. We do have a few recommendations for draft language today, and so this is our chance to look at proposed bill language and make sure that we all feel comfortable with that as we consider moving that forward. Sometimes, or I guess let me put it this way, is when the Housing Commission puts its seal of approval on a bill, we take great pride that we have dotted the I's and crossed the T's. And so we want to make sure we continue that great tradition moving forward. So let's all just be mindful of once we put our seal of approval on something, that's really important, that it's been fully vetted. We also have a couple of suggestions and considerations for bills or ideas that have been brought to us that we aren't necessarily in a position to make recommendations at this point, but we hope that it will be useful with respect to the patrons as they consider legislation going into 2026. And then finally, we have a couple of items where we're going to review ideas, considerations, or bills, and this is really just to get the conversation started so that we have that dialogue. It's an opportunity for learning. Before we get into the agenda, I did want to make sure that we had an opportunity for each of the work group members to quickly introduce themselves and say a little bit about the organizations or interests that they represent. So let me go ahead and start down here at the very end.
Good morning. I'm Mary Lawson. I'm here on behalf.
Good morning, Joe Lurch, representing the Virginia Association of Counties, and obviously a lot of housing issues, particularly for our members, are very important right now.
Good morning, Bisma Ahmed with the Apartment and Office Building Association and the Virginia Apartment Management Association.
Good morning, I'm Randy Grumbine, representing the factory build industry through the Virginia Manufacturing Modular Housing Association.
Good morning, Fabrizio Fasulo, Director of Policy and Planning at Virginia Housing. We are the State Housing Finance Agency.
Good morning, I'm Jerry Wright, representing Community Associations Institute.
Oh, there it is. Hi, I'm Laura Bateman, representing Virginia First Cities Coalition.
Great. And Jessica Romali, do we have anybody online for members?
Ashley or Welburn and Delegate Marshall are online if they want to introduce themselves.
Hello, Ashley Welburn, gubernatorial appointee.
All right, very good. And I think you have to say where you're calling in from for our online rules.
Oh, and I'm calling in from Vienna, Virginia.
Marvelous, thank you. All right, and we'll recognize we've got Danny Marshall, who is joining us from, I think from Danville, correct? Or thereabouts. He can correct us. All right, and again, I'm David Bolova. I represent the 11th District in the House of Delegates. So that's the city of Fairfax, as well as parts of central Fairfax County. So our first item is an update on declarant control. And so I am going to turn to Jessica to provide a report out Draft language had been provided to the work group ahead of time, so hopefully everybody's had a chance to peruse that. But Jessica, please give us the update.
Great. After much discussion, the small group reached consensus. While there is merit to establishing clear parameters for declarant control, like the parameters established in the Condominium Act, any legislative change could not modify existing declaration provisions pursuant to the Virginia Constitution that states that the General Assembly cannot pass any law impacting the obligation of contracts. The small group determined that the problem that occurred in Captain's Cove was in part enabled by an outdated subdivision ordinance. Staff looked into whether other localities had ordinances that may allow an issue like this to occur and determined that local ordinances have now been updated to account for public infrastructure build-out. The small group recommends, however, that disclosure about declarant control would be helpful to inform purchasers of a declarant's reserved right to continue to control association operations and appoint members to the board of directors. That is a draft in your folders for discussion today.
All right, thank you very much, Jessica. And I guess with regard to some of the other issues, as you mentioned, the idea of outdated subdivision ordinances, thank you for the research done on that to confirm that we don't have other old ones that could create new situations. I believe that the work group also talked about whether to put limits with respect to the time that a developer could continue to exercise control. I think there was interest in continuing to explore that, but that is a bigger issue. And so I guess with the work group's permission, we would keep that on the radar and take that up for next year. Do any members have any comments, concerns, or suggestions with respect to the draft language that was previously sent out on this issue? Mr. Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, there was a few late-hour tweaks to clarify some things with respect to this legislation, and with the goal that it's a disclosure piece of legislation with respect to declarant control, not all of declarant rights. I don't know if we want the drafter of a resale certificate to have to expound on all of the declarant rights. We're just dealing with declarant control, and we have no issues with the language.
All right, very good. And I believe that language was provided in the package today, correct? Okay. Correct. Anybody else? All right, so we typically don't take formal votes because we try to operate on consensus. And so let me just look down the lines here. Does everybody feel comfortable with providing an affirmative recommendation on this draft bill for consideration by the full Housing Commission? All right, and so without objection, we will do that. Thank you, Jessica. All right, so the next item is Senate Bill 1452, which was brought to us by Senator Sturdivant, dealing with conveyances and assumptions. And so do we have Bill West? Come on up. I believe we have also draft legislation in front of us for our consideration, but if you can kind of provide us a little reminder of what the issue was and some of the work of the work group, that'll help get the conversation started. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Bill West from the Virginia Mortgage Bankers Association. This one came out last night, a little curveball to me on our last work study group. I thought we were leaning more towards a notification similar to a Maryland bill. This is actually something that I spitballed out with Senator Sturdivant. So I want to thank Senator for working on a pain point of ours, 2 points that we really need to vet on this one. First and foremost, I'm worried that this is a feel-good draft and probably does get very little juice for the squeeze. Very few consumers actually read their annual escrow disclosures. So I take a little bit of issue with the words. I think they're a little misleading if you tell people that their mortgages may be assumable. That is very true for FHA and VA loans. The majority of the loans, Fannie and Freddie, as we've discussed, likely are not assumable. They are only assumable in events of death, divorce, and sometimes a trust transference. So 9 times out of 10, they're not going to be assumable. So I think we can help with the realtors and particularly listing agents in giving them another tool in their tool belt. So let's be careful with the verbiage on this and maybe do some wordsmithing and clean that up. The other thing I really want to vet before we go too far down this road is I want to check with servicers. And I apologize, this was different from what my takeaway was from the work group. So I will get busy with some servicers. What we do not want to do is diminish weighted average maturity for servicing values in Virginia. If you do that, you diminish service release premiums, which are important to aggregators who bundle mortgages and buy mortgages from mortgage lenders in Virginia, compensate mortgage lenders through a service release premium, the value of that servicing. And so if the maturity or the onus of disclosure goes up and diminishes that, we could inadvertently raise costs of borrowing in Virginia, which would be a very unintended consequence.
Yeah, that would certainly be unintended. Can you point us to what the Maryland version does? I know the idea was to alert people that it could be assumable under certain circumstances. I think this gets us sort of the way there. I have some thoughts about how to strengthen it, but is the Maryland approach fundamentally different than this approach? And was it discussed in the work group?
It was discussed in the work group, and I think, Molly, you were able to pull that up for us. I apologize. I don't have it committed to my memory. But yes, it was far more of a disclosure and an informative thing. And my takeaway from the work group was more to partner with realtors and make sure that listing agents in particular were aware that in certain circumstances, conventional loans could be assumable. That would be an added tool on their tool belt. And I think it's far more lift than a disclosure that is likely going unread. Sorry, I didn't put you on the spot there.
We'll give Molly a couple seconds.
She's pretty good, but I threw that at her.
I guess while Molly is doing that, does anybody have any initial first blush comments or thoughts? It sounds to me like you're suggesting maybe a dual approach rather than the single approach here. Is that accurate?
Accurate. And if we take this on with the disclosure, let's clean up the verbiage so it's not misleading to the consumer.
Okay. Mary?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. Like I said, this is not what I was expecting either. When I talked with Aaron yesterday before, we thought it was going to be much more narrow than what this is. So I'd love to hear your ideas on how to strengthen it and have some chance to maybe talk to Mr. West before I'm able to bless this.
Okay. Yeah, and so I guess my thought is the broadness of just letting somebody know that something may be assumable. I think that'll completely be lost on people, and so whether we can specifically say under what circumstances something's assumable, or point them to something that provides them that kind of information. I think that was my initial concern, because otherwise nobody's going to understand the context in which that's being provided. I guess the bigger concern that I have based on what you just said is that most people aren't going to look at this, in which case I don't know that this is, I think you said the juice isn't worth a squeeze, and in which case I would agree. I don't mind it being part of a toolbox, but we do want it to be meaningful, and so those are kind of my two initial thoughts.
Right, I agree with both of those.
Okay. So does anybody else have any thoughts about this? And if you do, maybe we can get those out now. And then what I'm going to suggest is that we move forward with some other items, and if we can have people who are interested and have thoughts, maybe have a break off. That would be very, very useful to see if this is something that we're able to fix, or whether we need a little bit more time. Okay.
Has the proposed Maryland statute up.
Okay.
And theirs goes into great specificity as to the occasions upon which a conventional loan could possibly be assumable. But again, that was more of a notification to consumers.
Okay. Molly, did you want to summarize it, or do you want to take a break?
If you don't, yeah, I can read it and take a break and move on and come back if that works well.
Okay. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. We got other items that we can work through, and if you all can kind of break out and see what you can come up with, that would be great. All right. Okay, so the next item is that we had an bill brought to us from, again, Senator Sturdivant, dealing with the Virginia Workforce Housing Program. And so we have Randy Grumbine, who is going to provide us with a report out on their work. Thank you, Randy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the work group consisted of Aaron Corman with the Realtors, Andrew Clark, the Home Builders, Virginia Housing Commission staff, and of course, Senator Sturdivant. We had a robust conversation, and I just want to briefly give you some of the suggested edits to the language for Senate Bill 1139. We wanted to adjust the AMI incomes to represent more of the targeted area of 80 to 120. So there was recommendation in there to that no one over 150 could receive a grant, and that the focus was going to be on that 120 or less AMI range for employees to receive this grant. The other thing we wanted to do was change who was eligible to participate in the program, and we pulled the definition of small business from another section of the code, 2.2-2240.7. It's basically the SWAM definition of small, women, and minority-owned businesses to utilize for growth in that area, that we felt that they were the ones that needed the grant money the most. Next thing we wanted to do was make sure that the grant was not going to be assumed as taxable income for the receiver of that grant. So there's language affects the code in a couple places, so the recommendation was put in place to address that. And lastly, we talked about the budget amendment, the fiscal impact that came back. The impact that came back had money in there for an employee, but no money in there to run the program. So we had a discussion about who would be responsible for getting that into the budget so that there's actually some meat there to distribute. So that was not resolved, but is something that we recognized will need some attention. So that's my report on that.
All right, thank you very much. Does anybody have any comments or thoughts on this particular piece of legislation? All right, so I guess in terms of where we go next with this one, number one, thank you very much for the work group for diving into the details and providing what I think are very helpful suggestions that would strengthen the concept. I think the two primary issues is we don't have a draft bill before us, so we're not able to react and forward that on to the full commission. I think the other issue is that this is a laudable idea. I am just not sure how it stacks up in terms of prioritization for all of the other different things that we might want to consider in the housing realm that are going to cost money, and so would be a little bit hesitant for us to endorse something and suggest that this was more important than X, Y, and Z. I also, and this is something for consideration by the patron, is this probably would make more sense as a budget amendment rather than a bill at this point, just because we don't know if this is going to be effective, whether it's going to attract that private investment into the system. And so before we actually put something hardwired into the code, this might make sense to put in the budget as a one-time pilot to see if it actually has legs. And then if it does demonstrate that it's working and doing what it should, that would be a good thing to go ahead and put in the code and make it permanent. So I guess my initial thoughts are this is really helpful feedback that the patron can use going into the next session, but that we're not in a position to be able to forward this on for a recommendation to the full Housing Commission. So wanted to get everybody, make sure we're all on the same page on this one. Okay. All right. So we will let the patron know, and we'll move on for that and see what comes out of the General Assembly. All right. For the next item, This is a right of first refusal. And so I know we've got Elizabeth Bennett Parker joining us virtually. This is the one where it's going to be, she's going to go through and provide us some really good detail about her thought process and what went into this particular draft. And so just managing expectations, we're probably not in a position to be able to endorse something, but this is a really great opportunity for us to educate ourselves because knowing Delegate Bennett Parker, this is going to be introduced in the 2026 session. And so we want to make sure that we're providing her with as good a feedback as possible so that she comes in with a tight, strong bill. So Jessica, was there anything else that I missed on that one? All right, Delegate Bennett Parker, take it away.
Thank you so much, Chair Bulova. This bill was initially brought to me by the Virginia Housing Alliance ahead of the 2024 legislative session. The bill aims to address the fact that more than 7,000 publicly supported affordable rental units are at risk of losing their affordability in the next 5 years, and that number quadruples to almost 30,000 in the next 10 years. As we know, we have an affordable housing crisis with these units, and we cannot afford to lose them and displace thousands of Virginians who cannot afford to rent at market rate. The bill would help protect these affordable units by providing a right of first refusal, or ROFR, to localities or their qualified designees in certain conditions. The bill is permissive and specifically addresses rental buildings that have already received state or federal assistance to create affordable units, for example, through the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit or LIHTC program. And when those affordability restrictions are expiring, which is after 30 years for LIHTC, and the owner intends to sell the building, the bill would allow localities to establish a right of first refusal if and only if they can match a third-party offer and have previously adopted an ordinance under this section. The owner receives the same purchase price and the housing remains affordable. If the locality cannot provide a matching offer, the owner sells to a third party. Under the bill, the first step would be for a locality to adopt an ordinance to require the owner of publicly supported housing to provide written notice to the locality and tenants no less than 24 months before the termination of the affordability restriction. This notice addresses what would happen to the building, such as whether the housing will be converted to non-residential uses, whether the owner plans to continue affordability, whether they plan to sell to a third party, and whether that third party would continue affordability. At that point of that notice, the locality could appoint a qualified designee, and they may file a notice of eligibility for ROFR. If the owner or the third party they intend to sell to choose to maintain affordability, the property is exempt from the ROFR. If the owner accepts a third-party offer of sale that would not maintain that affordability, then the owner must send notice to the locality and qualified designee. That notice then starts a clock, and the sale is on hold for 30 days, during which the locality or qualified designee could exercise the ROFR by making a matching offer. The timeline was specifically crafted to minimize the impact on the sale process. 30 days is a smaller delay than the vast majority of ROFR programs across the country and is not much in the scheme of large real estate transactions. The benefits of using this tool to preserve affordable housing and extend the return on taxpayer investment far outweigh the cost. If the locality or qualified designee cannot make a matching offer, the sale goes through. If they can make a matching offer, meaning it has the same terms and conditions and it maintains affordability for at least 15 years, the property is then sold to the locality or qualified designee. Overall, the bill aims to prevent currently affordable housing from becoming market rate by allowing localities or designees to purchase it while keeping the owners whole. We recognize that localities won't always have the funds to make a matching offer, so the ROFR mechanism also facilitates negotiation to keep some level of affordability in place. We know that we need an all-of-the-above strategy on housing, and one key tool is preservation. Preservation ensures that state and federal investments in affordable housing continue to benefit Virginians for generations to come. It prevents tenant displacement and the negative consequences such displacement has on the surrounding community, and it saves money. It costs 25 to 40% more to develop a unit of subsidized rental housing through new construction than it does through the acquisition and rehabilitation of existing housing units. So thank you so much for your time and consideration of this issue. Isabel McLean did a tremendous amount of work and research on this bill, and I know she's also prepared to discuss that with you and answer technical questions.
Great. Thank you, Delegate Bennett Parker. And Isabel, did you want to come in and maybe add any additional thoughts onto that? That was a lot to absorb. And
Good morning, members of the work group. Isabel McLean, I'm the Director of Policy and Advocacy at the Virginia Housing Alliance. Thank you, Delegate Bennett Parker. She covered pretty much everything. I'm just here to offer any sort of extra details, answer any questions. I do also have a one-pager that I can pass out that has some more further detail, including kind of this breakdown timeline that is included in this PowerPoint that Delegate Bennett Parker put together that goes into more detail about exactly how it works, if you all are wanting more of that information or not. But I think that the delegate did a really great job of just giving that general overview. So are there any questions?
I guess, could you re-go over kind of that process? And I guess what I would like to elicit out is making sure that there's nothing in there that would provide a chilling effect for somebody making an offer on a property at its highest value, knowing that somebody else could come in and simply match that. And because I know that there is time and work that goes into putting a bid or a proposal in. So if you can just slowly kind of walk through that process and maybe address proactively some of the concerns you heard out there.
Absolutely. And I think it might be helpful. I will just pass this out. I apologize. Some of these are on nice paper, some of them are not. Didn't have as many copies, but this will maybe help follow along. So Delegate Bulfa, just to clarify, you'd like me to just kind of walk through that whole process and that detail with specifically that question in mind?
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
Okay. So generally how this works, if a locality decided to exercise this authority, again, it's optional, they would have to pass an ordinance that would set this up. If they had this ordinance on the books and they wanted to set this process up, essentially in practice, it would mean that an owner of what we call in the bill, a publicly supported multifamily property that has 20 units or more, and that publicly supported is defined as a property that receives state or federal funding and has specific rent restrictions as a result. We are very specific in the bill, too, for exactly which programs we're referring to and what that means to prevent any sort of confusion or lack of clarity there. But in that case, if you are an owner of such property, the locality may choose to require that you give notice 2 years before the end of those affordability restrictions. So, for example, I'll apply this to a LIHTC property, which is the vast majority of publicly supported properties. They receive resources through the low-income housing tax credit program and usually have a 30-year affordability period. And so as you're getting closer toward the end of it, at least 2 years before, they would have to send a notice to the tenants in that property as well as to the locality, letting them know their plans, alerting them that in 2 years those affordability restrictions could expire. And for example, if they are planning already in a process to renew them, to continue that they would communicate that then. If they don't have a plan in place, if they are thinking about selling it, et cetera, whatever that plan is, that they would communicate it. It doesn't mean that they have to sell it, that they have to continue it, or any of those things. There's nothing required. It's just simply a notice. At any point from that point onwards,
Isabel, can that plan be that you have no plan at all?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
It can be that. Again, there's no requirement that you have a specific plan. It's just trying to get started on this process. So if this property is something that a locality sees that there's not a plan in place right now, there's potential risk that it might not continue affordability, that they can keep track of it and start to put a plan in place. So at that point, a locality could establish what we are calling in the bill a qualified designee, and that's a partner. Again, they would have to establish a process for exactly how that's determined, but it could be a nonprofit, it could be a for-profit organization, it could be a resident association. There's a lot of flexibility on how localities want to do that. But they could have a partner that if they choose to work with, that they could establish that relationship and communicate that to the owner of the property. So just a little bit of context for this. While this is a really helpful tool, all of it really depends on the locality being proactive and identifying this as a property that they would like to preserve. So unless they, either with a qualified designee or on their own, proactively file a notice of right of first refusal in the land records for that property, saying this property is now subject to a right of first refusal and explain exactly what that means, which is very much detailed in the bill, that is what actually starts the process for this property to be subject. So it's not just all properties, the locality has to be proactive and do that, either with their qualified designee or not. So that's what essentially starts the whole rest of this process. At any point from that 2-year or from whenever they file that notice of right of first refusal to 2 years after affordability restrictions end, that property is then subject to that notice. So it could be for 4 years if they do it right at the beginning of that notice, 2 years before affordability. But that's just the general time period that we're talking about.
Got it. And just to clarify, if the locality doesn't exercise that notice 2 years prior, the ship has sailed and you're unencumbered in terms of where you go from there.
They can do it up to, let me try to remember the exact, I think it's up to 3 months before the expiration of the affordability restriction, they can file that notice. I'd have to check just to make sure. Let me see if that's in the,
okay.
It may be on the fact sheet that I've given you. I cannot remember that number off the exact top of my head, but I think it's 3 months. So
2 months.
they have to file that notice. But if they do that 3 months before the affordability restrictions expire, that doesn't give them a lot of time to actually exercise this. So again, it's on the locality. If this is a property that they see that they would like to ensure that it stays affordable, they have to be proactive and give themselves as much time, file that notice, so that they can act. But the property owner it wouldn't be up to them to just know. They would be notified very clearly.
And if I could, and if other people want to just jump in, feel free. Because I know one of the concerns will be kind of the predictability of the process and keeping it open until 3 months or so before the change probably adds more confusion as opposed to making sure that it's predictable. So anyways, I don't know if other states provide a more time between the expiration and the notification, just so that a property owner kind of has a heads up in terms of how all this might work out.
And let me speak to that a little bit, because it does sound a little bit confusing that wouldn't give the owner enough heads up. But this is looking at a 4-year period, 2 years before the expirations expire and 2 years after. So this is trying to get it at that within their reasonable enough time for a locality to set up a relationship with a qualified designee, if they choose to do that, to communicate that. If it's 3 months before the affordability restrictions expire, that exact date doesn't necessarily matter, because the ROFR can still be in effect for 2 years after it expires as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I'm just in my head, I'm trying to think, that maybe you do a notification of interest at 2 years out, and then it gives you a year to find that third party. And then if you're not able to find that third party 1 year out, then you're fine. Anyways, I'm just trying to play with the timing to make sure that it's kind of fair to everybody concerned.
And I understand your question. I will say, comparing this to other states, and I can also speak more to that, and I know that Jessica did really amazing research through the Housing Commission as well, looking at the way that other states have done right of first refusals too, that has not been necessarily an issue. Specifically, the problems of timelines in particular, where it comes to be the most important, is that notice ahead of time for the locality to be proactive, and specifically the timing that it takes to that a owner has to give the locality to actually choose whether they're going to exercise the right of first refusal or not. Okay. So essentially, if they can get a notice that your property is subject up to 3 months before the affordability restrictions expire, that doesn't necessarily impact their plans for what's going to happen after the expiration date. If there's a sale going through, at that point they say, okay, from this point on, if we get a third-party offer, we'll let you know from here to the 2 years after the affordability restrictions expire. So if it would, I'd be happy to talk through changing that, but I will say in other states like Oregon and Massachusetts have really great right of first refusal policies that I would say if you dive deep into them through the research that Jessica provided, you'll see a lot of that influence on this bill. So we used a lot of really great pieces from their policies. Both of them don't have a specific restriction then, just saying that if and they actually don't even have this proactive piece that we do, where a locality has to file this notice in the property records. We've done that because we wanted to be extra careful with the whole unpredictable nature to ensure that the owner is very, very well aware of what this means. But in Oregon, it's actually just every property has to give this 2-year notice, and at any point from that 2-year notice to 2 years after, the locality or a qualified designee could exercise that right of first refusal. And they're just supposed to know that through the process that's been set up as expectations.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for pausing there. If you want to continue, and then we'll see if other people have thoughts or concerns once you wrap up.
Yes, and I appreciate you clarifying that, because it can be a little bit confusing, and it's helpful to put that in perspective that in other states where this has been practiced for many years, there is less of a concern of, are property owners aware of this process? Do they know that this is just a part of, doing business and what it means to own publicly supported housing? And because this would be a new option here, and it's up to localities to pass this ordinance, so it's not necessarily going to be the same in every locality throughout Virginia, we thought it was really important that the locality be proactive in communicating that to the owner, and then it's on them, their responsibility to do that, so the owner knows for sure if their property is subject to this. So that's where that piece comes in. And again, please stop me at any point if there's pieces of confusion. I know this can get a little complicated. So after the locality has done proactively filed that notice of right of first refusal, basically at any point after that, like I said before, till 2 years after the affordability restrictions expire, if that owner receives and accepts a third-party offer to purchase the property that does not include plans to extend affordability, then basically the locality or the qualified designee would have an opportunity to match that third-party offer, and in that way exercise the right of first refusal. Now I want to give a little bit more clarity there. What does it mean that if a third-party offer does not continue affordability? And also, I want to again clarify that this is not forcing the owner to sell. The owner does not even have to sell at all, and if that happens, then none of the right of first refusal comes into play. This is only in a situation where they do accept a third-party offer for this property. We have put language in there allowing localities the decision about what that means for them exactly, for what a third-party offer that would continue affordability means. And there's a reason for that, because specifically in Massachusetts, their program that they have has actually been most successful in preserving properties by just bringing people to the table and negotiating with third parties who said, oh, well, we really want this property, if we kind of agree, negotiate something about extended affordability, that would mean that the ROFR is off the table and that we can continue as we've planned. And the Maryland kind of DHCD, their version of their state housing agency, has found that process of negotiation has actually preserved more properties than when, they have also exercised their right of first refusal many times, but that process has been really helpful. And it's just bringing people to the table of having an incentive to say, something additional of, if there's a way to continue affordability, then, we will not be at all part of this transaction. And so we'd like that to be an option for localities for this too, but we didn't want to be overly prescriptive for what they could negotiate or not. But we wanted to make sure that it was still allowed good faith negotiation, so a locality couldn't require more than 30 years of additional affordability, which is the length of time where you can access resources like the low-income housing tax credit for, et cetera. So not requiring more than that, but it could be up to the locality to determine for them what would be enough for them to say, we will not, exercise our right of first refusal. This is enough for us to consider continued affordability. So I just wanted to clarify that for that sort of predictability. And all of the information about what that requires or what extended affordability would mean has to be communicated in the notice of right of first refusal that the locality files in the property records when they start this process off. So that has to be communicated from the very beginning, so it's really clear what would be considered an offer that exempts it from right of first refusal. So anyway, back to the exact timeline. When so say I'm an owner and I've accepted a third-party offer, within 5 business days, I need to notify the locality and the qualified designee. So it'd be very clear who I'm supposed to communicate based on that notice that was given to me. I have to communicate that to them, and they have 30 days to decide if they're going to match that offer. And I emphasize that because if you look at research from other states, other right of first refusal programs from different localities, different states across the country, that is the shortest response time that is out there. Most do at least 60 days, 90 days, even 120 days. We chose to do 30 days because we wanted to recognize that this could, especially as this is getting started, that we wanted to shorten whatever sort of delay and impact this has on the owner and the potential third-party buyer, so that this decision could be made as quickly as possible, but still giving the locality and the qualified designee enough time to determine if they can actually exercise this right of first refusal. But again, that really emphasizes, as I've said, the thread throughout all of this is that it really is based on the locality being proactive. If they're going to be able to respond in 30 days and decide if they can match that third-party offer, they have to be doing that planning way in advance. So that 2-year notice is really important for them to get started on that process so that they can plan for it. And the more time that they use of that, the more equipped they are to actually exercise it within those 30 days. So that's the most important critical timeline window there. Now, what do I mean by matching offer? Would it be helpful if I explained that a little bit in more detail? Because that also would get to, I think, the predictability you were.
Yep, thank you.
So we worked really hard on defining what a matching offer would be because we wanted to ensure that this would not be something that people could just sidestep and say, well, I'm going to put 20% down up front. I know that's not every single potential third-party buyer, but some may be in the position to do that. That's an extreme example, but some sort of offer that would be really impossible for a locality or qualified designee to match at all, basically meaning that then you're just completely sidestepping this right of first refusal process entirely. But also wanting to recognize that if I'm an owner and I get an offer for 20% down, that is very enticing. And so we wanted to acknowledge that a third-party offer that's able to put more down up front or provide more of that assurances that is valuable and that counts. And so we essentially put in there that it's a matching offer if you are matching the same down payment as a third-party or at least 4% down, which is much higher than the normal, for the vast majority of all transactions, much higher. So that still is giving the increased value of this is an offer that has more surety, less risk, but there's still some limit, so it doesn't have to be up to something as extreme as 20%. So we really wanted to have that balance to recognize that as an owner, if you're able to get a more enticing offer, we want to recognize that value, but also ensure that there's still some chance for localities or qualified designees to match. But again, we recognize that the owner should be getting what they could from a third-party offer, so it's really important that it is a match. That is, that they really the only interference would be that 3-day delay, that they would be still getting the same amount that they would otherwise. The only other piece in there is recognizing, and this is an issue that's come up with other right of first refusal policies across the country too, is trying to allow time for a locality or qualified designee to get financing together before an actual closing date, and what that could mean. There's a difference between matching the third-party offer and actually getting everything together to execute that. And so we do have in there that the down payment is refundable for up to 90 days or to the date of the closing date, as long as the locality or qualified designee has clearly demonstrated a good faith effort to obtain financing, but they might have failed. And that's, defined legally what that means specifically, but that is just to provide a little bit of flexibility, recognizing that it can be hard for someone to execute this. We're already giving them just 30 days, but they really do have to demonstrate that they really believe they could get the financing, that they really tried to put everything together. And even then, if it happens after 90 days, it's not refundable. So I think those are the main timeline things. I'm trying to think if there's something else important, but I think that is, we can talk about enforcement too if you have a question about that, but I think that should answer your question about predictability on the property.
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and open it up for any comments or questions so far. And Delegate Coiner, did you have something?
I did. I have a few things. Good morning.
Good morning.
The first thing that I would suggest, so this is just from being in practice in the real estate field, when you obtain your LIHTC mortgage and you sign those documents, the date is in those documents on the day that you close and sign. And it would seem to me less, this should be a burden on the localities, not a private property owner to keep up with if this is something locality wants to do. So to me, it would seem that as part of that closing, you would send a notice to the locality at that point in time and let the locality keep up with all the units in their locality and when those dates are. Then you don't have these 2 years. What happens if you forget? What happens if a property manager doesn't keep up with it? It eliminates the ability for that to happen. And it really puts the burden on where it should be, which is locality. If they care about this issue and they believe it's important, then they're going to have a calendar and have a staff person keeping up with those dates. So I would encourage you to think about, as part of that initial closing package, when you have attorneys and everybody working on it, that's when it goes out and the locality is put in notice and it's up to them to keep track of. The second thing is, as you're looking at this, is really looking at what is the public interest in it continuing after the affordability expires. I don't see a public interest in it after that point in time, so a question. And then the third thing that I would pause and just think about the impact. We went through a period of time where localities pushed all of their lowest income residents into very concentrated specific places and communities and did not allow for housing for them anywhere else. And we have worked very hard through mixed income LIHTC projects to not do that, because we know that when we have mixed incomes living in the same area, you have doctor's offices and jobs and things around, versus if you look at our locations that are 100% low income, there tend to not be resources close by, food deserts, medical deserts, you name it. One of my concerns in looking at this is we have a lot of LIHTC products that are market rate and a certain number of units are held for assistance. I don't see anything that would require that same mix to be held by the locality. And one of my fears is you have a mixed income, large apartment unit, a locality comes in because they can and they purchase it and they convert all of them and once again take everybody and put them in one isolated place, all of your low income housing units. So a policy issue, I think, as you're looking through this and thinking about how do we keep the current mix and not allow localities to go back to forcing everyone into certain locations because that's all the units that they have that are available. And then that would take me back to, again, looking at, I had one other item. I should have written it down. I will think about it, but I had one more. But those, I would just encourage you as you're working through this to maybe think through some of those items.
Absolutely. And Mr. Chair, is it okay if I respond?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, Delegate Coiner. I really appreciate your insights there. To the first piece that you asked, yes, about tracking expiration dates. Absolutely. There are many localities that do a fairly good job of that and are keeping track of where affordable housing is and when it does expire. I admit that that is also not the case in many other localities, and it is something that we recognize that just across the board with our efforts at Virginia Housing Alliance to bring more tools for preservation, that data does need to be more available, and that we're doing what we can to try to support localities in that tracking. We're actually working right now to try to develop a preservation database that can be used by localities and the public to know where affordable housing is and when those affordability restrictions could end. So that's in the in progress right now using some publicly available data that's already available through the National Housing Preservation Database, but we also have a memorandum of understanding, a data sharing agreement with Virginia Housing to get more detail and more accurate data too, which we're really grateful for. So that's in process. So I just want to say I recognize that that sort of data piece does not need to necessarily always be on that owner, that there is a responsibility from the locality, that we're also trying to work to make that data more accessible, that's really important. The piece about the notice here, and the reason why we are requiring that, is because it's very helpful to start this process and ensure that the locality knows what the owner's plans are. Because there's one thing to know when a specific restriction, affordability restriction end date is from when it was, the contract was signed 30 years ago, or maybe 28 years ago, I guess, in this situation. But it starts off the conversation to know what's their plans, what's going on, is there any sort of communication we can have. The locality can then, very much communicate how important it is that that property be extended to affordability, just trying to bring this acceptance across the board that preservation is a priority. It's also really important for the tenants themselves to know. And so that's a piece that is, we really wanted to include in here because we think that tenants should be able to know with as much advance. I know, of course, there's requirements right now in Virginia Landlord-Tenant Act that they have a 60-day notice for any rent increases. And I think that's understandable, for normal rent increases, but something that could be as extreme from going from rent restrictions of being in a program to suddenly going to market rate and having that property no longer be a part of that program and what all goes with that. That I think an extended notice period is important. So there's multiple purposes to that, not just saying that it's not up to the locality to know when properties are going to expire. And in fact, again, as I've said many times with this bill, it really does depend on the locality really taking that ownership and that proactivity for this, being proactive. And so, it should be on them that they are aware that a 2-year notice might be coming, and that they also have to know that it should be coming in order to actually enforce it. So if an owner does not know, does not send that, and this is an important piece here that I want to make clear, it's not something that a locality could come back 5 years down the road and say, well, you didn't give us this notice, and here are all these issues now we're gonna, there could be all these complications for what that means. A locality has to, again, proactively communicate to the owner within a very specific time period, which I think for this notice compliance, again, it's within 60 days of when that notice was supposed to be received. The locality has to communicate to the owner, you did not comply, and give them a chance to comply. Again, say, tell us what your plans are. Is this going to continue to expire? Have you renewed anything? Because that's the other stuff, is if they know from when the contract was signed several years ago, they don't know if they're in the middle of potentially renewing that or getting rehabilitation financing and finding some sort of way to continue. So they have that opportunity to comply. But again, if a locality does not communicate within that time frame, then that's considered compliance, and the locality cannot do something down the road to say you didn't. So I wanted to make that clear too for that predictability of this, because we've definitely received some concerns of, well, what if someone doesn't know and they didn't comply with this, and then there's some sort of other deal or some sort of issue down the road? How could this potentially make other people liable, open up any sort of questions? And the same is for enforcement of the actual right of first refusal too. It's on the locality to communicate very clearly within a certain time period that that person has not complied. So I think I went a little bit sidetracked, but your second question was about the 2 years after. So this is actually something that seemed to be a best practice in several other ROFR programs, especially Oregon. And this is just recognizing that we don't want to create this new kind of trend where, as a third-party buyer, if I don't want there to be someone coming, knocking on the door and matching an offer, that I don't just wait until right after the affordability restrictions have expired to then make that offer, or maybe 6 months down the road, et cetera. And recognizing that even if affordability restrictions have expired specifically on a date, nothing has happened, they've gone market rate, that there are there's still value in trying to bring affordability back to that property, and continue to keep that in our affordability stock, even if there's a little bit of a delay. So that's where there's that 2 years after. I would be open to shortening that if that's a suggestion by folks, but we just want to make sure that it's still given time and recognizing that that there's still a lot of value in continuing affordability or bringing back affordability to this, even if it takes a little bit longer than after the affordability restrictions expire. And then the last thing, oh yes, you'd brought up issues with mixed income units. I know that it is something that has, it's still very tricky to do fully mixed income units with low-income housing tax credit program. I know that there are ways that developers do this, and it is recognized, best practice now to not use affordable housing as a form of, continued redlining or segregation by income or race, and keeping, everyone in affordable housing in a certain area. There's a lot of developers now that very much do not do that. But this is also recognizing, this is applying to properties that were put into the low-income housing tax credit program in the 90s, early 2000s, from a long time ago. And so there might not be as many mixed income units in them yet, or have that kind of as a strategy. But I understand what you're saying of wanting to ensure that this continues what the value of this affordable property as it is now too, that this doesn't interfere with that. I'll also say that what we really see the value of using this tool is recognizing that there are limited resources for preservation. And so we know that localities and qualified designees would not be exercising this on most of the properties that potentially could be eligible, but they're going to be prioritizing ones that are specifically in areas of opportunity where, this affordable housing is most needed. Properties that now are in areas where there's schools nearby and groceries, et cetera. And so if there wasn't an intervention, then almost guaranteed that property would become market rate, would become significantly more expensive, and would displace those residents. And so really the main tool for this is to try to prioritize those properties that, again, are most at risk of affordable, that without an intervention, they would most likely not stay affordable. So it doesn't fully answer your question, and I appreciate that suggestion. I would definitely want to think about that, but those are just some of my initial thoughts on that topic.
Okay. Ms. Ahmed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've had several conversations on this throughout the years, and Delegate Bennett Parker as well, and definitely appreciate the intent of the bill to preserve the housing affordability. But, we've seen in other jurisdictions, it actually does the opposite. The practical effect is it discourage investment. We've seen that in our other jurisdictions that have it. But a 2-year notice plus a 30-day match period, it does create that uncertainty in deals. And speed and predictability are just not predictable. It's already a strong concern within our membership on within working with the locality and how long it takes. And if there's a holdup in the process, they're just stuck. So this has already been a very strong concern within our membership. And then the second thing that kind of stood out to me was the qualified designee part of it. And if that would create another bureaucratic step within the process, would it make it closings more complex and not less? So that just kind of stood out to me. So I wanted to flag that there. But, as a point, we like incentive-based strategies rather than more regulatory red tape there to make transactions harder. And we can talk more offline. I'm sure we'll have plenty of conversations, but wanted to put it out there.
Great, thank you. Any other thoughts or comments? Yes, Mr. Fazula.
Just a quick clarification. So if I understand correctly, basically, the private party that presents an offer, from the moment the offer is presented, accepted by the owner, has only 30 days of waiting time. Is that correct? I'm asking only because my understanding is that this is really short compared to other. Why is that? Why did you? Because I understand you're looking for the best practice across different programs. So why did you choose the shortened period here?
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. I appreciate that. Yes, we did choose to go with something that is on the shorter end. In Massachusetts, it's also a 30-day turnaround, and they also have this 2-year notice requirement in the beginning, and really recognize that the onus is on their state housing agency and their localities to plan ahead if they're actually going to exercise this right of first refusal. I think over the years of hearing concerns like, for example, as expressed by Ms. Ahmed about what impact this could have on the transaction process, we wanted to minimize that as much as we could, and so use what we saw in literature, what other states have done that was on the shorter end. And again, recognizing that the general theme and process of this is that it has to be a proactive process, that planning really is started after that 2-year notice. So it would be very, very difficult without having any sort of plans in place for a locality or qualified designee to respond in just 30 days. And so we recognize that. And I'm open to expanding that. I think we do have pieces in the legislation that, any locality that utilizes this authority, that they report information and data about it, along with other sort of reporting requirements that are asked of localities already, so that we can see the impact of this and really track it, and then come back and see if this is too short of a time period, it really is making it too difficult, that having that lead up is not enough, that maybe we could expand it. But we were just trying to get something started that we were hoping would be more of a compromise, more agreeable to folks who were really worried about that delay. So that was definitely what we definitely I want to say that also in responding to Ms. Ahmed's remarks, that we did really consider that and wanted to make this as predictable as a process, minimize that impact as much as possible. But we also think that an impact is worth it because of how serious of a crisis we are in with our need for affordable housing, and the upcoming surge of units that could potentially expire their affordability in the next few years, and this sort of wave that we are facing of how incredibly important it is, that it is worth that small interruption, but still acknowledging that an interruption does have impact. And I would also just like to say that we've done extensive research over the past 2 years that this has been, that we've been working on this with the incredible Delegate Bennett Parker. And also really appreciated the research that Jessica did through the Housing Commission too. Would be happy to see any research folks have about the impact that right of first refusal have had in other localities. Anything that you can share with us about how that may have impacted markets. We've not been able to find extensive research about that, specifically on a negative side. We've seen a lot of great research about how it has helped preserve properties. But very open to any sort of information others have about that.
Great. Delegate Coiner.
I'll have more, I'm sure, but I remembered the last thing that I said. I wish I'd written it down. When you talk about notice to tenants, and again, I'm more focused on the mixed rate, which we actually have more and more of. Like in my area, we have a lot of the 20% unit split. I would encourage you to only send notice to the tenants who were impacted by affordability. I say that because most of the market rate tenants have no idea that there are affordable units in their building. And I think when you send that out to everyone, everybody asks questions, right? Well, I don't think my rent is very affordable. Well, you're not one of the units that's impacted. I think that just really puts inside one building. We already have issues with people who don't want different neighbors next to them for different reasons, and I just think it increases that. And I think it would clarify for those who are benefiting from the affordability and not put in a place where property managers send out notices to everyone and you have people asking questions. I think it puts them in a place that they shouldn't be about talking about source of income and who's paying what. And I just think it takes that element out of it. So I would encourage you to think about who are the people who need to be notified and the impacts versus telling the world that there are folks who live within your community who aren't able to pay what you're paying. I just think, again, how do we communicate and why are we communicating it to certain people?
Any other questions? I did have one kind of final point or question for you. And so number one, I do appreciate what Delegate Coiner was saying about putting the onus on localities to notify the properties. I know it's a pain, but localities have every opportunity or ability to search land records in order to be able to do that. And if they're not able to pull that off, then it probably doesn't speak well for their ability to pull something else off. So I just think it's cleaner and fairer to be able to do that. The other one I wanted to do is revisit and make sure I understood what it means to have a matching offer, because it didn't sound to me like it was you basically give them the exact same offer. You've put parameters on that. But my concern about that, number one, is the fairness issue. But number two, it would seem to raise the risk that you all talked about, that you would just simply ride out those 2 years and keep it, realizing that ultimately, you can sell it 2 years later and not have to worry about this process. And so, going back to, what's the feasibility of keeping that matching offer really simple, which is it's the same terms and conditions that was offered by the third party.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I see your point. I will say the vast majority of it has to be actually matching terms for everything. The only reason why I went into those details was to try to address, to go preempt any other questions you might have about that. Essentially, and the vast majority of any instances where this would occur, it would be essentially an exact matching offer. We just wanted to put those two parameters in for extreme examples on if the third party was in a position where they could put significantly more upfront than is normal in the vast majority of all property transactions. So we wanted to put that in there just to ensure that that wasn't a way to sidestep the right of first refusal process. And again, recognizing to our choices to reduce the impact with that 30 days, that, as long as the locality and qualified designee can really show that they have put in a good faith effort to obtain financing, that there is a small window where it could be refundable for them, recognizing that it can be really tough to do that. So, but again, that's only in very extreme situations where, it's not very common to put in an offer, especially, it wouldn't be considered good faith to match an offer that you didn't think you could get financing for, to get that refundable anyways. So that is in very small examples, situations where something might happen that was totally unexpected, just to try to ensure that this could move forward. But again, that is not going to be the case in the vast majority of these transactions.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you for the great questions from the work group. One I guess, statistic I want to throw out there with respect to why conversations like this are very, very important. And so I once asked our House Appropriations staff, what is the cost of creating an affordable unit in Virginia once you've gone ahead and considered all the tax breaks and all the grants and all the things that pull together from that? It's about $500,000 per unit. And so any time that we can preserve an affordable unit and it costs us less than $500,000, we win with respect to affordability. So I just wanted to throw that out there in terms of why this conversation about not losing ground on affordable units is worth having. So thank you to you. Thank you to Delegate Bennett Parker for bringing the issue to us.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for your time and for your very insightful questions and feedback.
Great. All right, and then finally, Jessica, we are going to talk about manufactured housing. And so this is an issue originally brought to us at the request of Delegate Maldonado. Jessica has done some really great research in terms of what the best practices are out there nationally for manufactured housing and how that compares to, hopefully I'm not overselling this, in terms of what we are doing here in Virginia versus things that might be options, because I think there are things that we're already doing and we want to make sure we understand that before we start thinking about what might be next steps for manufactured housing. So with that set up, Jessica, thank you.
Yes. Thank you. So like Delegate Bulova said, this presentation is to further discussion that was brought forward in the May 22nd work group meeting and provide some introductory information on policy options to increase permitting, construction, and ownership of manufactured and modular housing. So in a lot of aspects of these policies, Virginia is a bit ahead of the curve, which is a great thing. So a lot of these suggestions, policy options from other states go further than what Virginia currently has. So manufactured housing, which is built under the standardized federal HUD code, is often discussed as a critical component of addressing housing supply shortages and affordability challenges. According to Freddie Mac, manufactured homes cost 45% less to build than site-built homes on a square foot basis. So around half of states have laws that specifically address zoning restrictions on manufactured homes. The scope and scale of these laws vary. Some ban the prohibition of permanently sited manufactured, or some ban the prohibition, yes, of permanently sited manufactured housing in single-family residential areas, while others only require that localities allow them somewhere within their boundaries and leave the rest up to local decision-making. So I'm going to outline the two noticeable policy models in states that mandate some form of permitting or equal treatment and consideration of manufactured homes. In recent years, many states have required localities to permit manufactured homes wherever single-family homes are allowed. At least 11 states are using this model right now. So the model mandates that if a zoning district allows for conventionally constructed single-family dwellings, it must allow for manufactured homes without a conditional use permit. The homes are often only subject to design criteria that are applied uniformly, or policies explicitly state that locally mandated design requirements cannot be used to prevent the permitting. So going over a few highlights from the states that require the inclusion of manufactured homes in their single-family zones. Kentucky is the most recent and enacted their law in 2025. It allows for some flexibility in home placement and maintains that local governments can still regulate their architectural features like roof pitch, exterior materials, and foundation skirting, but those regulations cannot be more stringent than those applied to site-built homes. So Idaho's law explicitly states that the permitting of manufactured homes in single-family zones does not invalidate any restrictive covenants. I've seen this in a couple other states as well. It seems like a wise provision to put in to address those concerns. Nevada's law requires any zoning or land ordinance to include manufactured housing in their definition of single-family residence. It details statewide requirements for the units, but allows a county whose population is considered small to adopt standards that are less restrictive than the statutory standards. So while Nevada does allow manufactured homes in single-family areas, they put a lot of state-mandated restrictions that keep it a little tight. So I put a note in there about Ohio and Idaho because they restrict how localities can regulate roof pitch. Localities are allowed to regulate any sort of other architectural elements. But roof pitch, I found, is often discussed as a cause of exclusion in manufactured home permitting, so they specifically isolated that. Maryland and Maine are considered the most strict of these policy examples. Maryland offers no exceptions, including in historical districts, and that is something that I found fairly unique. Moving on to the less restrictive model, it prohibits the total exclusion of manufactured housing by local governments, but allows localities to regulate their location and other standards. They require municipalities to allow manufactured homes just somewhere within their boundaries. So New Hampshire is a recent example. Their recently passed law prohibits municipalities from completely restricting manufactured housing and requires them to provide reasonable and realistic opportunities for the siting of manufactured housing on individual lots and in parks or subdivisions within residential districts. Localities do maintain control over location, but they cannot completely ban manufactured housing. They must choose one of 3 statutorily obligated provisions to formally adopt in their local decision-making. So moving on to some programs that have included manufactured housing in recent years. Policymakers and advocates are increasingly considering reforms that mandate the inclusion of manufactured housing in any sort of state-funded affordable housing program. California is the most comprehensive and recent example. They require all state and local programs designed to facilitate homeownership in some way, and that includes loan origination and repayment programs, tax credits, down payment assistance, anything, to include manufactured housing when feasible. So they enacted this law to make housing assistance programs available for the lease or purchase of manufactured homes, hoping to encourage the increase of manufactured home permitting and creation. So Florida's State Housing Initiative Partnership Program is a little bit more lax. It leverages a guaranteed funding-based stream for local housing by conditioning the receipt of the funds in part on local housing assistance plan, and they encourage those plans, kind of like our comprehensive plan in Virginia, to consider manufactured homes and allow up to 20% of the funds they provide to be used for the creation or preservation of manufactured homes. There is a bill they introduced this session. It has not reached a conclusion yet that would make it so any amount of money a locality wants, takes out that 20% limit, can be applied to manufactured housing. Again, these types of policies are made to just encourage further development. I also want to mention that Virginia Housing continues to include manufactured homes in its federally backed loan programs, ensuring that state-level financing and down payment assistance grants are available for qualified manufactured homes. Not every state does that, so that's a good example of what Virginia is doing that puts us a little bit ahead there. So some states and localities have enacted laws that provide tax or other financial incentives when manufactured home community owners sell their communities to entities that can preserve affordability. This kind of lines up with the ROFR discussion we were just having. These incentives act as enticement for the community owner to sell to the residents and may also make it easier for residents to make a competitive offer. These policies allow tax breaks and other incentives, like waiving certain fees, to incentivize private owners to sell to entities that will preserve affordability. This doesn't have to necessarily mean nonprofit or tenant-based. It can be any organization that is looking to preserve affordability. I wanted to highlight this because this is also a recommendation that came out of the HB 854 housing study. Montana, Rhode Island, and Washington all offer some sort of financial incentive to manufactured community owners. So as we kind of just talked about, opportunity to purchase laws require owners of manufactured home communities to notify residents of their intent to sell and provide residents with time to make an offer. Virginia does have a notice provision. Additionally, a few states, including Pennsylvania, have established programs similar to Virginia's Manufactured Home Park Acquisitions Pilot Program with funds to help residents purchase their communities. I believe DHCD is releasing the results of the first wave of that pilot program in December, and that should help provide some additional context to this discussion. So this was a brief introductory presentation that will be expanded upon to include an exhaustive list of policies related to manufactured and modular housing, and will be based on existing research and enacted policies. Here are some additional points that we plan to include in the full version of the research and paper that will be on the Virginia Housing Commission's website. Please let me know if there are any specifics or questions that you all have that would be good to include.
All right, thank you very much, Jessica. Any comments or thoughts? Mr. Fasulo.
Yeah, one quick comment. Have you looked also into the residents-owned communities type of approach? Because that's something that we are exploring as Virginia Housing. I think we just funded one of those communities in Virginia, yes. And we understand it's taking good implementation in other states as well. So.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you, Mr. Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Jessica. I think you might know what my comments might be with regard to restrictive covenants. And you mentioned something at the beginning of overriding existing restrictive covenants. Maybe you didn't, but I heard that and my ears perked up. So something to consider is the contracts clause issues of the Constitution with regard to laws being made that would override existing contracts, because that's what really restrictive covenants are.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Yes, so most states that have implemented what I originally first spoke about, the zoning that manufactured homes have to be included in any sort of single-family zoned area, they have explicitly, probably 75% of the time, mentioned that you cannot override existing covenants. So it is something that is thought about and addressed by other states.
Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Other thoughts, comments? Delegate Coiner.
So two thoughts, Mr. Chair. One, you really need a bifurcated, two separate tracks running for existing manufactured housing stock that's in localities, and then completely separate on new and going forward. Because I think one of the things that the old policies have done is it's kept the model for, I'll call them neighborhoods that are manufactured housing neighborhoods. They are typically not treated as real estate because of the way they were developed, right? So it's all personal property, which means if you own your unit, you don't get any of the benefits to then move up into the next housing where you get that credit, right? That you can go tax-free and move into something else, because you are treated with as personal property instead of real estate. So I think one of the things as you're looking at going forward, looking at the different states that have model policies about not allowing them to be banned or expressly incentivizing them, is ensuring that we're treating anything new going forward in a way that is tied to it being real estate. I think that is where you increase your affordable housing stock in a way that also allows that stock to keep moving. Because, what you'll see today, they're building what people are calling affordable, and it's wild to me because it's not $400,000 as a starting price for a home. Like, in what world I never thought we'd be in that $400,000 was like the cheapest thing you could buy. But in reality, our older housing stock is still affordable, but the individuals living there can't afford what we're calling new today, right? So you have to figure out how you keep the real estate portion of it where folks start somewhere and then the next group of housing up is still affordable for where they can move to free that up for another income level. So that for me is when this keeps coming up every year, trying to figure out how we handle our current stock and how it has historically been treated and work on policies associated with that. But then how do we set up policies and programs to incentivize the high quality ability to use manufactured housing going forward for new real estate? So that's my thought.
Thank you, Delegate Coiner. Other thoughts? Okay, I just had, kind of following up on this in terms of, and maybe you don't know this, in terms of the landscape of Virginia localities and how many of them have exclusions and or things that are de facto exclusions. I'm just trying to get a sense of the universe that's out there and what localities have individually done.
That might be a better question for Joe, as I'm seeing him up there. De facto is something I am not aware of.
Joe, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm going to lean in on Randy on this one too, because he and I have been having continuing discussions on this. So, the current law is if you're agriculturally zoned or similar, whether you call it agricultural or not, you have to allow, if you allow for a stick-built home, you have to allow for a manufactured home. I do know that there might be localities, and Randy can speak to this, examples where they maybe have a manufactured home district that they set up purposely for this, whether it's for existing ones that already exist or maybe areas that they would allow for it. I think also, just to throw in there another wrinkle that Randy and I were talking about yesterday, currently there's a new product that's a duplex that could provide some promise, and so maybe there's a way to, let localities know they may want to update their zoning ordinances to allow for those potentially. But Randy, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Mr. Grumbine?
Yeah, just a few thoughts. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, yes, Joe's right that manufactured homes by right in Virginia is limited strictly to agricultural property unless the jurisdiction has given the expansion to other jurisdictions, and some have. But we do see that mostly as a rural solution, not in the suburban edge, and certainly not in the cities, where they can most utilize a product for infill. And so that's where the challenge is. We are seeing some counties that are being progressive in adopting widespread adoption of placement of manufactured homes. Cumberland County is a perfect example where they said anywhere in the county you can place manufactured homes, no matter the residential designation. So we are seeing greater adoption, but that is slow, and there are still often challenges when it comes to needing to get a variance. If you're trying to place a home on a land that is restricted, it's the typical NIMBYism with all the neighbors coming out to fight placement of that product. So still a lot of work to do to inform the public. And Jessica, I just want to applaud the depth of your work. It was thorough, and even I learned a few things from that. So thank you for going in depth.
Yeah. And I guess my next question, and perhaps Randy and Joe can opine on this one as well. And thank you for kind of the current landscape in Virginia. And I'm struggling other than the NIMBYism that you went ahead and mentioned, is there a bona fide health, safety, and welfare reason why you would treat a manufactured home any different than a stick-built home as long as they were meeting the same kind of standards?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, there really isn't. I would say that we earned the stigma that we have by the product that we put out last century. So in the 70s and 80s, we were more focused on affordability and not durability. That has changed. Unfortunately, we still live with the stigma of the product that we put out there. So today, the biggest challenge is getting local officials to realize the quality, the energy efficiency of today's product, and how the HUD code, although it doesn't update as regular as the Virginia residential code, there has been significant updates to that code to move it along so that the product can innovate. And so we are seeing that innovation take place so that even as Joe mentioned, we can now do duplex up to quadplexes on one piece of having 4 units attached and still being considered a manufactured home. And that's really hard for local officials to wrap their head around. You know, they're not allowing manufactured homes on single lots. Now, how are we going to allow 2 homes on the single lot? So there's a lot of work to be done there. And the last thought that I had regarding that question is the challenge is they're just built to 2 separate codes. One's a federal code, one's a state code. So they're both rigorous, but there really is no reason to exclude the product today.
Thank you. Any other thoughts and comments? Jessica, yes.
To add to what Randy just said, most states have accounted in their certifications of manufactured homes for geographical safety concerns. I know Florida's includes a big provision on wind resistance and safety. So it's something that states are building into their manufactured home definitions and approval processes to account for any specific geographical safety concerns.
Great, thank you. All right, this is very useful conversation, and so stay tuned as we figure out our next steps. All right, so after a little bit of a detour, we are going to loop back around to item number 3 with respect to conveyances and assumptions. I think that we have another draft and potential piece in the valley. So Ms. Lawton, do you want to lead the conversation on this?
Yes, and I want to thank Molly so much and Bill for helping to working on this over in the corner. So I think, Mr. Chair, to do what the work group had agreed upon before today, after on line 9, assumable, if we would to add under certain conditions such as FHA, VA, or conventional loans in the event of divorce, inheritance, or death.
Okay. That's very, very succinct, and I think more in line with the specificity that we're thinking about, but I don't want to make assumptions for the work group because we typically don't try to fix things on the fly, but this one seemed relatively quick. Molly, go ahead. Oh, gotcha. Okay, just wasn't translated into the draft. Okay. Anybody have any thoughts, comments, or concerns? Delegate Coiner. Well, you gave me that look, so.
Well, I was listening to this as I was driving to get here, so I got to hear. This wasn't, I know other people said it wasn't what I thought we were going to do, so it's still not what I thought we were going to do. So, you know, I guess my concern is adding more, the more things we keep giving notices to people, the less I think they pay attention to the things that are actually really important. And, you know, I thought we were moving in the direction of saying, you know, moving forward in Virginia, mortgages, if you get divorced, shall be assumable, right, for the protection of individuals who have a mortgage in the event of divorce or death. So I thought we were, instead of creating this notice that this might be something possible, that in these very limited circumstances in Virginia, we're going to say you have a right to those and we move on. There's no notice. It's just is what it is. And your mortgage is the document itself that gives you notice of these, is what I thought. I just, worry again. We keep creating more and more notices that don't actually change anything for you in terms of your already existing rights. And anyone who goes through a divorce or has a death and contacts their lender because that's the reason that you're in a situation of needing to refinance, they're going to tell you automatically what your rights are, which are not always allowing you to automatically, one of you assume the current loan in the event, well, I'll use divorce as an event or death of one of the spouse. So I guess that's where I'm in a different place. I thought we were trying to protect people in the event of death and divorce were the two that I remembered most particularly. One spouse left behind being able to continue that mortgage. So that's where I am.
Yeah, thank you, Delegate Corner. And I guess my understanding, and Mr. West, if you want to come up to the podium, you're more than welcome to. I guess my understanding is that you already have a right to an assumable mortgage under those circumstances.
Not always.
And I guess my thought was it was more of a matter of how do you provide notification to somebody so they know to exercise that right, and so either you can do it this way or to your point, or you could or it's something that's brought to your attention. But anyways, Mr. West.
Going back to an earlier presentation that I had one of my colleagues present when I was out of town, we've got a case there of state law trying to wag the dog. These are Fannie and Freddie notes that you're talking about specifically. FHA and VA loans are assumable. That's part of the deed of trust note. So those are qualified assumptions since 1989. Those are good. They are seldom used for many reasons. Conventional loans, by and large, are not assumable. And I don't think you're at the state level going to be able to legislate or tell Fannie and Freddie what they're going to do with their instrument, because that's a federal issue. So I think where Senator Sturtevant was going was, how do we get the word out that occasionally a conventional loan is assumable? And so I agree with you. I think there's very, very little juice for the squeeze, my term here. Most of the consumers don't read the disclaimers, even if they're at the closing table or if it's part of the loan application. If they did call their mortgage servicer, they would get guidance on a conventional loan when they are assumable. I think it's a great tool for listing agents to know about when they are selling a house. But the disclosure, we can wordsmith it and make it correct and accurate and factual. How many consumers take note of it? I don't fancy our chances there.
Delegate Coiner.
So I thought at the federal level, the exception where we could have the ability to say that it shall be was in the event of death, divorce. I thought there were that's my understanding and practicing in this area every day. So right. I guess I thought our goal was to protect Virginians when they have these very limited circumstances and are not forced to refinance into higher interest rates, into other products, in the very limited instances with these loans that we are talking about. I'm not talking about FH, I'm talking about these. And those very limited, there is at the federal level the carve out that does allow in these events. And so I do believe we could, yes, I do believe we could in Virginia protect those borrowers and say your loan shall be assumable in Virginia in these limited circumstances, which is carved out from the federal loan program.
Again, they're qualified.
Mr. West, yeah, if we could just make sure you're going through me to keep the conversation on track.
Sorry. So yeah, I would use the word may be assumable, not shall be, because then they are still qualified assumptions. You do have to meet ATR and QM.
So I guess Mr. West and maybe Delegate Coiner, I guess I'm lost in terms of whether people in Virginia, because as Virginians we're trying to protect, already have a right to assumability under certain circumstances prescribed at the federal level. And is there anything in Virginia that we need to do to protect that right or trigger that right, or is that right already covered and now it's just a matter of making sure people understand that right at the right time?
That right already exists, so I don't think we need to protect it. I think what we need to do is maybe promote awareness, because most people will say that a conventional loan is not assumable.
Delegate Coiner, is that your understanding or not your understanding?
I would disagree with that,
okay.
Mr. Chair, but...
Jessica.
I just wanted to offer some clarity of the small group discussion. So the consensus was around the education component. So it was discussed that there is a high number of assumable mortgages in Virginia that are never go through the assumption process. So people might not understand that their mortgage is assumable. And the goal of the legislation and the discussion in the small group was to potentially increase the amount of people who are applying for assumable mortgages.
Yes, I will say that the initial legislation brought forth by Senator Sturtevant was no, to make all loans in Virginia assumable. And we said, no, you can't do that. You're going to impact the value of the mortgage. And that doesn't work. And again, my analogy of the tail trying to wag the dog, it's not going to fly. So we pivoted from there and went to how do we make it more known when there are assumptions. Assumptions are very rare. The latest data I think I had in the presentation was from 2023. And of the 20 million mortgages that were eligible for assumption, there are only 6,000 assumptions done in 2023. That's grown notably in 2024. I don't have good data on it yet, but HUD alone says that their assumptions doubled. There are impediments to assumptions. They need a large down payment in most cases. So they're seldom used. So I think where Senator Sturtevant had pivoted was to try and make it more pronounced and available when they are available to consumers. And the other thing I would wordsmith on the annual disclosure for Delegate Coiner, if you're trying to make sure that all Virginians can take advantage of this when proper, is not to put it in an annual escrow disclosure. Not all mortgages have escrows. The majority do, but make it just an annual servicing disclosure.
Thoughts on that? All right. So I think what I'm going to suggest, and I really am looking for everybody to make sure we're on the right track, because if people are not comfortable, we'll kind of stop. Is the language that we have in front of us does no harm. It potentially does some good. And so what I'm going to suggest is that we can run with it, realizing that we're not taking a step backwards. If there are ideas about how to strengthen it in terms of exactly where this goes, or again, pending the conversation between you and Delegate Coiner, there are other things that we can do to trigger protections for Virginians. We can raise that issue. We still have some time between now and December 4th, correct, Jessica, for our next meeting. And so I think we'll want to know that this could be paired up with something, but I think this is one track of potentially several tracks, but at least this one pushes us forward and, again, does no harm and potentially could be useful. And are we okay with that? Okay, all right. So we'll run with that, and then we'll look forward, Jessica, if you can help to go ahead and wrangle those remaining pieces together, just because I want to make sure I fully understand what are our powers in Virginia in order to be able to effectuate this and ensure that we're letting people know of those rights. And if there's something that we need to do in order to perfect those rights, I also want to be aware of that, even if it's not part of our initial recommendations.
Perfect.
Okay. All right. Good.
Questions?
We have no more questions. Thank you.
Much
Okay, so that one was one what I was expecting to be super easy. We a little bit more complicated than I was expecting. So I appreciate everybody working really hard. Realizing that this is our last work group meeting, and as always, if we have new information that comes up, we want to make sure that we are digesting that before we're presenting it to the full Housing Commission, in case there are unintended consequences. So if everybody. If you're looking at it and all of a sudden you're like, hey, we didn't consider that, make sure that you're letting Jessica know, me, Molly, so that we can say, okay, maybe this isn't ready for prime time. But at least at this point, it sounds to me like we're okay with moving this one forward. All right, next item I have on here is public comment. Do we have anybody who would like their couple of minutes of fame and glory? Seeing none, is there any other items for the good of the order from our work group members? All right. Seeing none, I just again want to thank all of our work group members. This is the lifeblood of the Housing Commission that we do this. I also want to thank our tremendous staff, Jessica and Molly, for all of their hard work. We couldn't do this without you. So with that, the committee shall rise.
Because that one is a year. It's the 19th, that's what I'm saying. Because basically you're front loading everything and you're relying on the fact that people do the right thing in those 2 years. That's what it is. Instead of being pushed by time and say like you're gonna have a year of negotiation. Yeah, at least for the next few months until result. In general, I feel like in the next year or two, our team is going to be more engaged in this than what we were doing that. And not because of that, just because like please, yeah, if there is anything, send it to me, it's fine.